The opinions expressed on Missouri Viewpoints may not necessarily reflect the views of the program producers or of this station. Closed captioning is provided by United for Missouri, committed to educating citizens about the impact of economic policy. Learn more at unitedformo.org. Generous support is provided by AT&T Missouri. Learn more at att.com. And additional support is provided by the Missouri Budget Project. Learn more at mobudget.org.
The issues that matter, the newsmakers who impact our lives. This is Missouri Viewpoints with Mike Ferguson.
It is seldom a good thing when the law, our courts, and families are all involved in a case. It's emotional, it's expensive, and it affects the future for the kids regardless of whether good decisions or bad decisions are made. Hi, I'm Mike Ferguson. Thank you for being a part of Missouri Viewpoints. We are coming to you from the Lindenwood University campus in St. Charles. If you think family courts and juvenile justice do not affect you, think again. And it's not just about the cost of the system. In about 15 minutes, we get a look into the current state of our juvenile justice system. What needs to change, if anything? We'll hear from the Missouri Juvenile Justice Association. Let's get started closer to home for, well, many of us. If you haven't been through a divorce yourself, you know someone who has. I pretty much guarantee that. And when children and custody decisions are involved, it gets personal, it gets emotional, and like I said, it gets expensive, and it has a big impact on everyone's future, especially the children caught in the middle. Mark Ludwig is with the Missouri-based but national organization called Americans for Equal Shared Parenting. And Mark, I know this is a new organization, relatively new, that you just launched. But what is it about the family court system that you are wanting to address?
Yeah, the main thing is to try and get it like any other court system where two parties walk into a courtroom on equal footing. Up until now, there's been basically a presumption that one party was going to get favored status with regard to custody issues. And I just believe that a child should have access to both parents as long as they're fit, willing, and able. We want to make sure that children are protected from abusive situations or neglectful. But barring anything like that, and to be honest, no one knows that until they walk into the courtroom. So what we're trying to do with Americans for Equal Shared Parenting is get what's called a rebuttable presumption, presumption of 50-50, but it's subject to a rebuttal based on 8 different determining factors. Okay,
so just to kind of put it in layman's terms, what you are wanting to presume is that walking into a divorce and a custody situation, each parent would be presumed to get equal amounts of custody.
Exactly. And to be honest, it's from the child's perspective. In my mind, it's not about mother's rights, it's not about father's rights, it's about the child's right to have equal access to both parents that they love.
So when it comes to, for instance, the money in all this, I mean, I have heard whether it was called the father's rights movement, whether it was called, whatever different movements, the accusation a lot of times has been, well, this sounds like a bunch of dads who don't want to pay child support. Is there a difference in the two movements, or is this an evolution of what's been called the father's rights movement?
Well, I think money comes into it, and I think some people try and twist it into that issue. But my sole focus is always that my son deserves to have access to both his mother and his father, and so does every other child in the country. Now, obviously, down the road, there's going to be child support issues that'll come into it, but my main concern first is you can always address the money issues down the road and fix that. But you can't fix a child who's grown up without their parents. You've got one time to get this job right.
Let's talk about some of the basic logistic objections somebody may have. Parents get divorced, somebody moves into a different school district, the kid has to reside somewhere, travel expenses, schedules, a parent maybe has a job that takes them somewhere else. How would what you're proposing address those concerns and try to keep it to a 50-50 custody arrangement?
Okay, in an ideal scenario, we're talking about primarily parents that live within 20 miles of each other.
Sure.
We do realize if parents live out of state, we're not going to be able to do a week on, week off type situation. But for the overwhelming majority of the situations, the parents live within 20 miles of each other. So if that's the case, then I would have no problem at all driving my son if I got a chance to see him every single morning during those weeks, to take the extra time to drive him to that school. And I know people tell you, as you say, that's one argument that people bring up, and I respect the argument of, well, gosh, it turns them into a suitcase child. But my attitude is, if a child can take time away from their parents to go to school every day, how is that any different than a child spending equal time at night with both of their parents? And I think that quality time bonding with both their parents, because especially I think of for a child, if a child only gets time to do their homework with one parent and only gets to be able to come home from school and see that same parent, where's the bond going to end up with the other parent in that relationship?
We are visiting with Mark Ludwig, who is with Americans for Shared, let me get the term right again, Americans for Shared Custody.
Americans for Equal Shared Parenting.
Equal Shared Parenting, I apologize.
That's okay.
So new organization right there. Talk about the impact on the kids. You just referenced that a second ago. And in many cases, a child primarily resides with one parent, another one has essentially visitation rights. I've been through a divorce, and mine was kind of the exception to the rule, where I ended up with 100% custody, and my now ex-wife really wasn't a factor for most of the years, but that's highly unusual, and I understand that. When a marriage breaks up, obviously something went wrong. I think a lot of times we have the presumption that, well, we need to find out who's most fit, and that person then is the primary custodial parent, and then the other parent has managed visits. Why is it so important for parents to have equal time when clearly something went wrong in the first place, something was broken in the relationship in the first place?
I think the key is the fact that to separate the issues, there's the child-parent relationship and the parent-parent relationship. Just because something went wrong between the parents' relationship and the marriage doesn't relegate the child to taking less time with the other one. In a child's mind, their first two heroes are always their mom and dad. When I grew up, I loved spending time with my mom, and I couldn't wait till my dad got home from work every day. And every child is like that. And unfortunately, when you take one of those parents out of the relationship, study after study has shown that society is paying the price. Now, most of the statistics we have are based on fathers, but to be honest, it's gender neutral. It doesn't matter whether it's the mother or the father, the child wants to have time with both of them. But when you look at the statistics of teen suicide rates, high school dropout rates, behavioral problems, incarceration rates, over 80% of all of those are tied to, either directly or indirectly, growing up without one of their parents in the home.
Now, even before formally launching the organization, you've actually had a bill pass in our state. Kind of assess the state of our family court laws when it comes to custody right now, in your opinion, and is there anything you'd like to see reformed or changed moving forward?
Yeah, that's a big key. We're working on a bill next year. We've been working on one. We got one passed in 2016, and I say I came along towards the end. It was Linda Reutzel, a grandmother from Cape Girardeau, that got it started. And Jeremy Roberts and Kenneth Goins did a great job of what's called a Facts, Findings, and Conclusions bill. And what that says is a judge doesn't have to start out the case with 50-50, but if they do for any reason sway too much one direction or the other, they have to address written facts, findings, and conclusions on 8 factors of why did they give one direction or the other. So it basically swung the pendulum. Up until then, the standard in Missouri was pretty much every other weekend and time on Wednesday nights. And now the pendulum has been swung quite a bit. What we're pushing for in 2018, and I believe we're going to get past, pretty much all the eyes of the country are on Missouri right now. I mean, we had 25 bills across the country last year, and every one of them in one way or another referenced Missouri. But we're wanting with that, what I call 50-50 rebuttable presumption that says two parents walk into a courtroom, until we know facts, they should be equal. Now, once we know facts, if they're unfit or unwilling or unable or neglective or abusive, then we can swing the pendulum one way or the other.
Okay, we just have a moment or so left. There's a lot of parents out there. When you get into that situation, it is just paralyzing with fear and anxiety and anger and all the emotions. If somebody wants to be in touch with you to learn more about what you're doing or just to have questions, what's the best way to do it?
Yes, we have a website up and a Facebook page, Americans for Equal Shared Parenting. Very active on the Facebook page, especially with my trip to Washington recently. A lot of activity, but they can either go to the Facebook page for Americans for Equal Shared Parenting or the website, AmericansForEqualSharedParenting.com.
All right, Mark Ludwig, thank you so much for the time. It's a tough discussion no matter what angle you take on it.
Thanks for having me, Mike. I appreciate it.
Now, from the family court to the juvenile justice court, or maybe even the adult criminal court, depending on the situation. In about 9 minutes, we transition to a look at another part of the law and our young people. Has our juvenile justice system kept up with changes in our culture? We'll hear from the Missouri Juvenile Justice Association. Before that, making Missouri agriculture more. State Ag Director Chris Chin explains what that means in this week's Positively Missouri feature here on Missouri Viewpoints.
Do you want to answer that?
Nah, I'd never with a kid in the car.
It's okay. I'm not here. I'm there.
Late last year, I made a change, and I constantly get asked the same question. Hi, I'm Mike Ferguson from Missouri Viewpoints. I get asked how I lost 30 pounds in 3 months, and I've kept it off. I'm healthier now, and if you're ready to make a change like I did, I want to send you a free sample of the nutrition that's working for me. Just email morewithmike@gmail.com and I'll send it free and with no obligation. That's morewithmike@gmail.com.
Turning a 20-foot wall into a canvas takes vision. So will getting into college. I've got what it takes. So do you.
Bring out the action hero in you. Fuel up right and get energized. Be part of the greatest action movie ever. The first movie that puts you in the action. Show us how you train and eat like an action hero. Join in at actionheroalliance.com.
The juvenile justice system is supposed to help young criminal offenders get back on track before they become adults. Is it measuring up, or do we need to make some changes? We'll hear from the Missouri Juvenile Justice Association in about 6 minutes. Right now, here's a viewpoint on another issue impacting our state. This commentary is provided by United for Missouri.
We hear a lot about tax reform these days, but so far have seen very little. Missouri continues to rank near the bottom of the list when it comes to personal income growth. It's time for that to change. It's time for the state legislature and governor to enact real tax reform that allows you to keep more of your paycheck. Tax cuts for everyone and simplifying our tax bracket structure creates an environment that rewards work, not punishes it. Missouri is a state of special interest where everyone except the Missouri taxpayer has a lobbyist. Nowhere is this more evident than government giving certain companies special tax credits while other Missouri companies get none. It's not the role of government to pick winners and losers. Reducing and eliminating tax credits needs to be part of any tax reform conversation. A simplified, fairer, and flatter income and corporate tax code will help eliminate that kind of crony capitalism and make Missouri a leader in economic freedom. It would spur the creation of new jobs and let you decide how to best save and spend your money. I'm Carl Bearden with United for Missouri, and this has been your Missouri Minute.
There is no question about it. Agriculture is crucial to Missouri, but can agriculture be more in Missouri? That question is part of a theme State Agriculture Director Chris Chin is promoting right now. She explains in this week's Positively Missouri.
Hi, I'm Chris Chin, Director of Agriculture.
And I'm Garrett Hawkins, Deputy Director here at the department.
And we're here to talk to you today about MORE. MORE is our strategic vision that's going to guide us over the next 4 years moving forward to make sure that everything we do in agriculture is to be more.
Our initiatives will fall under 4 pillars: feed more, reach more, connect more, and empower more.
So feed more. What will it take to feed one more person? The Missouri Hunger Atlas shows that 1 in 5 Missourians are food insecure, and we want to make sure that farmers and ranchers have an important seat at the table to making sure that we can meet that need and make sure that no family goes hungry.
Reach more. What will it take to reach one more consumer? As farmers, you all are the best advocates for what you do every day, and with your help, we can help rebuild trust in food decisions.
Connect more. We want to make sure that we connect the very last mile in rural Missouri. We want to make sure that every farm and ranch has access to high-speed internet. We want to make sure that we can have strong vibrant rural economies to bring our kids back home to use the technology that's available for us. But it doesn't stop at the farm gate. We want to make sure that the businesses in our rural communities, as well as hospitals and schools, have access to high-speed internet as well.
And finally, empower more. With the question, what can we do to help you do what you do best? And that's farm. First out of the gate is regulatory review. And we're hopeful that all Missouri farmers and ranchers and all who use the department's services will be engaged in that discussion. Just know that every day at the department, we will be asking the question, have we moved the needle? That'll be the metric that we use over the next few years to really decide if we have helped improve the quality of life for all Missourians.
So follow us on Facebook and Twitter or on our website to learn more about what we're doing every day here at the department to move the needle. And we want to leave you with one question. What can you do to be more?
Something has, of course, gone wrong when a young person gets in the juvenile justice system. Are we doing the best we can for them and for the entire state with our system the way it is now? Or do we need any reforms and updates? Find out what it means to you in just over 3 minutes. Right now, here's a perspective on another issue impacting our state. This commentary is provided by the Missouri Budget Project.
Many changes to Medicaid being discussed could put the fiscal and physical health of our state at risk. In Missouri, only the most vulnerable can access Medicaid. Nearly 2/3 of enrollees are kids, and another 25% seniors and people with disabilities. Medicaid is actually a great deal for Missouri taxpayers, too. Our state shares the cost of health services with the federal government, which pays $1.72 for every buck the state puts in. And because of the way Missouri finances its portion, state general revenue pays for only 17%. If federal payments are capped, they wouldn't keep up with the cost of health care. Extra costs would fall on Missouri taxpayers or mean huge cuts to services for seniors, kids, or people with disabilities. Despite misconceptions, more than 3/4 of enrollees have at least one working adult in the family. Many of the rest are retired. Changes to Medicaid financing would be short-sighted and come at great cost to state taxpayers, the health of our most vulnerable, or both.
When I'm working, things can get so hectic, so sometimes I need to find an easy way to express what's most important to me. Like with my crew, I use shorthand to tell them what I need. And when I need to talk directly to my fans, but the most meaningful shorthand of all is the one I use when I'm about to drive. #X. It's an easy way to tell everyone that I'm about to drive, and I do it every time before I get behind the wheel. Use #X to pause the conversation before you drive, because no text is worth a life.
Late last year, I made a change, and I constantly get asked the same question. Hi, I'm Mike Ferguson from Missouri Viewpoints. I get asked how I lost 30 pounds in 3 months, and I've kept it off. I'm healthier now, and if you're ready to make a change like I did, I want to send you a free sample of the nutrition that's working for me. Just email morewithmike@gmail.com and I'll send it free and with no obligation. That's morewithmike@gmail.com.
Know what?
What?
Since I got adopted, I've learned a lot about these humans.
I know. I mean, check out these two. It's Flirt City over here.
Yeah, I noticed that. It looks like my human is definitely into your human.
Oh, look! I think she's getting his number.
Nice.
Your human's got some sweet moves.
Takes after his dog. Oh, look, they're doing that thing where they put their arms around each other.
She kicked up a leg. It's like in the movies.
That's awesome. Looks like we're going to be hanging out a little bit more.
Kids will be kids, right? Well, yeah, but sometimes that goes too far, and sometimes it's not just kids being kids. It's behavior that results in minors dealing with the courts, and there could be any number of reasons for that. Thank you for staying with us on Missouri Viewpoints. I'm Mike Ferguson. Now, whether you have children or not, the state of our juvenile justice process affects you in some way. Joining me now to explain is Rick Gaines. He is the Chief Juvenile Officer for St. Louis County. Rick, thank you so much for the time. And when we talk about juvenile justice system, this is one of those issues where I think a lot of people just kind of emotionally or mentally disconnect because, well, my kids don't get in trouble, or I don't have kids, they're already out of the house. Why should we all at least pay attention to what's happening in the system?
Because I think, Mike, sometimes, Mike, that people forget that our kids really are going to be our adults in the future. And so it is very important that we really look at what's going on in the world of juvenile justice as how that impacts us today, but truly how that will impact us tomorrow, because the kids truly that we have in our system today hopefully will turn out to be better citizens for our future as they move forward in the social justice system. It's important that these kids really have a positive impact as to how they might be able to impact their own jurisdiction, their own town, their own city. And so we really want to put a lot of emphasis on how we do our work moving forward to try to improve outcomes for kids.
Now, I suspect, having not been involved in the juvenile justice system in a different way, that for every 100 cases, there's probably 100 completely different sets of circumstances that brought that child into that system.
Right.
Is there an overall goal or structure that you want the impact to be on all 100 of those, figurative kids?
Yes. What we try to do is in our world is try to build, I call it competency for kids. And so that means to me, how can we interact with kids in the juvenile justice world that gives them an opportunity to learn, really having teaching moments for the staff that really work with kids, but having kids have a learning moment as to their offenses that they've been brought to the court for. And so a lot of the work you hear in the juvenile justice world is talking about best practices, best outcomes. We look at our data, but we really want to have kids have a better competency ability so that when they get involved with us, have we given them the actual tools to be to make better decisions, to have better outcomes for themselves, and how that impacts not only them as an individual, but how that impacts their community, because community safety is also part of the discussion that we have in working with kids in our juvenile justice world.
Now, you are part of the collaboration that is the Missouri Juvenile Justice Association. Obviously, you're, as we said, with St. Louis County. There, I suspect, are juvenile justice officers around the state involved in MJJA. Why is it important to have multiple organizations and multiple perspectives work together when it comes to a statewide juvenile justice process, and not just leave it with the courts and with parole officers and things like that?
We call them stakeholders. And to me, stakeholders really impound the work that the juvenile justice system really does. And so Missouri Juvenile Justice Association, being one of those stakeholders, really not only do they have the voice for the kids that we're working for, the families that we're working for, but also the professionals that actually work in the juvenile justice system. And so it's good to have a variety of folks who come to the table, the stakeholders, even the folks who may not agree on everything that we do in the juvenile justice system, but it gives us an opportunity to have a conversation. What will work best for kids? What are the concerns that our stakeholders are having? What are the concerns that even those who say that the system may need some overhauling? What is that conversation like, so that we can come together, try to do what we can in the state of Missouri to have better outcomes for kids and families that actually are part of the system. And even in some of that, we even try to reach out to talk about how can we impact kids even before they get to the system. How can we do diversionary issues, prevention programs, resources that community folks can bring to the table to talk about what can they do to try to support kids and families for better outcomes.
Well, that leads to my next question, because as we all know, sometimes kids are just kids and they do stupid things because they're kids.
Right.
But what are some of those preventable circumstances? What are some of the things that can be addressed that could factor into a young person entering the juvenile system as a minor?
Yeah. Sometimes we get calls on a kid who may be 8 years old, 10 years old, and sometimes those kids get referred to the juvenile court system, and typically it's because those kids are having some issues of trauma or something that's happened to those kids in their own life that gives them, have them have a bad day at school of some sort. And so what we try to do with kids is, what can community resources come and bring to the table? What can our stakeholders bring to the table to try to give these kids accesses and families access to resources and programs that gets to the root of some of their problems, not just because there's a crisis now at the school, not because there's a crisis in the community and now law enforcement has to be contacted. A child may be arrested for an act or an offense or behavior that typically is pretty common for kids to have those type of issues. So what we try to do is with our community partners and stakeholders is, let's sit down, let's talk about what resources are in our jurisdictions, in our communities that can reach these kids way before it gets to the point that a crisis is presented to us and now law enforcement or the school has to make a referral to the juvenile court.
And we've just got a couple of minutes left here, but I try to keep the conversations as real as we can
Sure.
here. Rick, there's a lot of people taking in our conversation right now who say, well, yeah, I hope they get those kids straightened out in Kansas City and St. Louis, because that's what happens in the urban cores in our city. Is this something limited to urban cores?
Oh no, this is all over, not only the state of Missouri, but just nationwide. Kids are having issues, and kids are going to have issues. How can we address those issues way before it gets to the point where we're now criminalizing behaviors by sending them to the juvenile court? And to me, Mike, it goes into reaching out to community stakeholders, community partners, agencies that support a lot of the work that the juvenile court does. How can we get those kids and families to those resources way before a juvenile court referral has to be addressed?
So you're in one of those jobs where ideally, in a perfect world, you'd work yourself out of a job.
Without a doubt. And I tell folks every day, I've been doing this for over 30 years. And each day I got a smile on my face so I can come into work and work with kids and family, because to me that's my benefit, that's my professionalism, and that's what we look for in a juvenile justice world.
Now, if somebody wants to be involved, or they want to learn more, or maybe they're worried about their own young person, what's the way to learn more or be in touch with you?
Missouri Juvenile Justice Association, I think you'll have that information on your website. But even just contacting their local juvenile court system, their local juvenile officer, they're contacting those folks to have access and conversations about the work that the juvenile office does, and ultimately because it does impact communities across our great state and our nation.
And the website is mjja.org.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Rick, for stopping by and giving the insight.
Thank you.
Well, we covered some very touchy topics this week. So what is your take? Be sure to get involved in the conversation on the Missouri Viewpoints Facebook page, and that's also the go-to page for news updates from around the state each day. On behalf of Lindenwood University Television, thank you for being a part of Missouri Viewpoints. I'm Mike Ferguson, and we'll talk to you again next week.